Hello and welcome
And this is
to
Brad
the Almost
Hathcock.
Merry
Welcome
Moment.
back
My
to the
name is Aaron
Bradcast
Spears.
featuring Aaron Spears, the not dead Aaron Spears.
Uh, Rest in peace, Aaron Spears, who I actually knew who he was because like we all do, I googled my name back in the day, and I was aware of him. He's a drummer,
I thought that people
and
who
he's
shared
no
names
longer a drummer.
also shared telepathic preferences.
Um, Actually, the only person I've ever seen with the name spelled the same way as mine, which is one A, is the guy Aaron Ralston who cut his arm off when he was
the
trapped between that
127
rock
hours guy.
in Utah.
What about Aaron Sanchez from?
Mhm.
He's a famous
Anyway.
chef. I would imagine it. He spells it the same.
Don't know that
He's
one. Don't know that
He's
one.
one of the chefs on MasterChef. Like, he's one of the judges and shit. Aron is how he says his name. I still watch
I
it.
love
I
MasterChef
love
back
me
in the
some
day.
Gordo. Gordon Ramsay is the man.
Aaron. Yeah, he's fantastic.
No, so a
I've
few
eaten at
years
one of his
ago, I was in
restaurants. Have you?
Vegas for work, and I really wanted to go. I think it was Hell's Kitchen or something. It was called in Vegas, and I didn't want to go by myself, and nobody else was really willing to go because our boss had like made some kind of dinner plans or some shit for us, and I would have rather have gone to Gordon Ramsay's restaurant. That's for sure.
I went to the Hell's Kitchen by, I think it's Caesar's Palace. I also went to Gordon Ramsay's Steak in Paris. Paris.
Yeah,
Pretty
he's
amazing
one of my
food.
favorites, especially because he screams at
In good
people and shit,
times.
and that's one of my favorite things. And he calls people idiots, so I was all in on Gordon Ramsay for sure.
Gordon Ramsay has never slowed
He does
down
more and more.
since that first season of Hell's Kitchen. Like, he's constantly opening up restaurants. Yeah, he does that
Yeah,
show, the
Restaurant Nightmare or
restaurant
whatever.
show where like he saves
And
the
then he
restaurant.
does both MasterChef and
Yeah.
MasterChef Junior.
And he's on Twitter, or not Twitter, Instagram all the time. He'll watch
I can't
people's
imagine
cooking
he
videos
does
and like
much
critique
cooking
them. It's pretty
anymore.
funny. Hmm. I don't know. I don't know. Um. All right. Well, we didn't come here to fucking have a nice conversation about food because the episode of this
Yeah, World War
title of
Three.
this episode
Let's
is
fucking
World War
go.
Two and a half. Because there's bad stuff going on.
I know, it's grand.
There's bad stuff happening in the world. The last time we talked, yeah, we haven't talked since I think just after October 7th during the Israeli massacre, and then I was out in Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, which by the way is like a very overrated city. Of all the cities I've been to, I was like, this is it. Anyway, so I'm back, and since we last talked, Israel, it took about 3 weeks to figure out what they wanted to do. People were kind of like, let's go, but they decided to cut Gaza in half, and they're coming in from the north, the east, and they've already reached they control the middle of Gaza now, so they've actually gotten all the way to the ocean. They control all the roads now, and they're surrounding the hospital in Gaza, the biggest hospital, which is where the headquarters is located for Hamas, located underground. Do you want to talk about stuff
Sure.
there now, or
Let's
do you
go
want to
with
talk
stuff
about what's
there
going
now.
on here
I
at
mean,
home?
obviously, we've seen close to a month since the Hamas invasion of Israel, and Israel is pushing back. You're right; they kind of like waited, but apparently they didn't really have like a plan for what's going to happen after the fact, because Hamas. They don't ultimately.
I don't think they care.
But we know Hamas is a democratically elected government, basically, that just happens to be terrorists, or they were terrorists that just happened to fall into government power, a la the Taliban. And I mean, ultimately, they're going to try and crush them, but what are they supposed to do afterwards? A lot of people keep making this comparison that, like, if Israel laid down all its arms, Hamas would come through and, like, wipe them out and kill every Israeli. But if the people in Gaza would lay down their arms, there would be peace. Like, do you believe that to be true? Do you think it's really that easy?
That's it.
Because I don't.
Yeah,
like,
actually,
this conflict has been going on for a long time, and
Israel
there has
doesn't.
historically been far greater losses on the Palestinian side than the Israeli side. Just historically, that's a fact.
Israel never strikes Hamas
No,
first.
I don't disagree with you.
I mean, it's just a fact. So, yeah, I understand there's definitely a discrepancy in the amount of lives lost, but that's Hamas's whole tactic for war is based on the population being a human shield. So, the head of Hamas, the spokesperson this week, not only said we will continue to fight for the elimination of Israel, but they said that the Palestinian people, that's the responsibility of the United Nations. Hamas doesn't believe that they are responsible
but
for them.
as it currently
That's
stands,
simple
they obviously
calculation.
control the humanitarian aid, and it definitely goes towards funding terrorism for
Yeah, they do.
sure. I mean, the head of Hezbollah, or the head of Hamas, I believe it is, isn't even there. He's like living in Qatar. He's supposedly worth like $4 billion or something like that.
He's one of the richest people on earth,
I guess. But he's like
if you
sitting
believe
there in
what I
right,
guess
he's like sitting there in Qatar and
because
is
he pockets all the
saying,
money.
like, we're gonna wipe out Israel and like all this shit, but you're not the one there on the ground. And so there's been some criticism coming out of like Hamas, for Hamas leadership and stuff, because they're not anywhere to be found. I think it's like the top 3 commanders or whatever of Hamas are all in Qatar, and they're all billionaires.
Yeah. Well, I know this for a fact. So this, when you say like, does Israel have an end game? This is the end game. They go in like they are right now, and they are just going to completely wipe out Hamas like it's some sort of cancerous infection. They're going to cut it out, and they're going to destroy all the tunnels, and they're going to seal up that border. They're going to end the. I think they have a. What is it? It's not an embargo. Is it an embargo when they
blockade.
close your
Yeah,
ports? Like a blockade. So like there was like kind of a half measure blockade Israel imposed
I was
on
gonna
Gaza,
say it's not really
which by the way Egypt
half-measure,
also
like,
has a blockade
it's
on it. Like
kind
it's
of like just
it's
it's
misleading.
just like kind of, yeah, like absolutely everything.
They check
but that's where
everything
you see
coming in there.
Makes their weapons out of like everything. Like they take the piping for water and stuff like that, and they somehow make bombs. But
Water pipes.
I was listening to Tim Kennedy today on Joe Rogan, and he was saying like apparently, and this is indicative of how Hamas builds their weapons. 28% of all missiles fired out of Gaza land in Gaza and kill Gazans. That's a fuckload of missiles to like just randomly willy-nilly drop on the people that you supposedly are protecting. No, they're actively using them.
They aren't protecting them. That's the thing.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, they're actively using
they've
them
actually
as
just said it.
shields and stuff.
That's
but,
all it is.
I think the question that arises, and Tim Kennedy did kind of touch on this, is, there's like roughly 30,000 like Hamas members in the state of Gaza, and there's 2.2 to 2.6 million Palestinians, and like, why haven't they risen up against Hamas to try and kind of like throw them out? and I do find that to be a very intriguing question. No, he
Did
kind of
Tim Kennedy have an
wonders.
answer for
He
that?
kind of wonders. I believe he just kind of
Because I
like
have an answer for
pontificated a
that.
little bit on it, and it wasn't like what do you do in that regard?
Well, now you just limited Hamas, but I think that there is a meaningful number of Palestinians who do support Hamas and what they did. They might not like that they're being attacked now, but I guarantee you that on October 7th, there were a lot of very happy Palestinians. Um, and maybe that's why they don't rise up. Also, I don't know if regular Palestinian people either they're just willfully ignoring it, or they just are aware of what Hamas is doing, and then they just kind of, I don't know, like, oh, Hamas is storing 4 months of fuel and water and food underground, and they're just kind of like, it's underground. Like, what do they know what's going on? I mean, I don't know. I just want to end by saying that what's going to happen is that after Hamas is eliminated, which they will be, they're just going to
I
seal up that
I
border,
think
and
Israel's gonna need
that's it.
help in
They're
that
just
regard
they're
because
done.
they're facing problems from everywhere. Like the Taliban supposedly has
Always
gotten
have.
passage through like Iraq or some shit. So they have declared war against Israel, the Taliban, I believe. And yeah, so the Houthis in Yemen have
The
also
Houthis have too, I
declared
think.
war against Israel. Hezbollah is apparently having some kind of political stump speech tomorrow. So they've released like a teaser trailer for it,
Tomorrow?
and
Yeah.
showing like all the chairs set up for it and everything. And it's expected that they're going to declare war against Israel as well. So we talked about it last time. Like Israel's just surrounded by enemies. Like it's such a weird place to be where like the only place I think that borders you that is okay with you is Egypt. And like yeah,
But
I
they had
mean
to like wipe Egypt out in order to
it's
have that. They had to have a war with them. And Jordan's not. They're not an antagonist, although the Queen of Jordan was like spouting off some bullshit from
yeah, I mean,
Hamas
what we're
propaganda
seeing is
recently.
definitely going to be a very tenuous situation with everybody on all fronts really trying to like come after Israel. If the Taliban makes it to Israel to like invade, that's really if they make it, that's really gonna push like Hezbollah into it. Like, okay, like I guess even if they don't declare war, they'll end up saying like, oh, we're all in, and then you're gonna have Hamas be like, okay, well, if they're doing this, then I I almost wonder, especially because we've seen propaganda come out everywhere, including in the U.S. and everything about this situation, and we see a lot of support for Palestinians. You know, you and I kind of talked about it a little bit about Hamas is kind of winning um, like the war in the media to an extent.
I so yeah. Let me comment on that really quick because you don't know what the sentiment is. All you see is what's on social media. Actually, let's talk about the anti-Semitism in America now because this all leads into it anyway. First of all, I'm shocked by it. I can't believe how much of it I'm seeing. But I think the polling is the only way you'll find out what American sentiment is. And so like Echelon polling came out with one I think today or yesterday that showed something like 71% of Americans think Israel is doing the right thing. And I found that to be like a little heartening because yeah, there's a lot of noise on X and videos and stuff about like people painting stuff, people doing pro-Palestinian protests. It's all really kind
Hmm.
of gross. The whole tearing down of the posters of the missing children that are still missing. Like even American hostages, they're like, nope, can't have that. And so yeah, you kind of it kind of seems louder than it is. Like, it's amplified from social
Well, it's
media
kind of
and
the
the
same
media,
thing
our
with like
media.
far left and far right stuff. Like,
What do you think?
those are the overwhelming minority of people, but they're that vocal minority that's always out there, and they seem to get the loudest push from the media and stuff.
Yeah.
Polls, as we know, can like be kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, polling showed Hillary Clinton absolutely destroying Donald Trump, and we all know that that didn't happen. So polls, yeah, aren't like. Are you saying that
Echelon is
all the polls that were
reputable, I
done
would say.
around
I trust that.
that election weren't reputable?
No, I'm just saying that, like, what I'm saying is
Take a
after
look at
that election,
themselves.
a lot of
Yeah,
polling
and
companies
I
had to,
agree.
like,
Yeah, and I
re
again like I know
yeah,
you
they had
and
to
I kind
redo
of
how they
like
do
go
business.
back and forth, and we joke about this a little bit. Like, I am in support of Israel wiping out Hamas 100%. Uh, but the way that they are going about it also isn't the best. I understand casualties of war, like that happens. Uh, but again, Gaza is a very different and interesting place in the sense that like 50% of their population are actual children that aren't terrorists, and it's just like you're killing innocent people, which I get again
Um,
happens part of war, but it's it's pretty indiscriminate bombing and stuff sometimes. But again, we're seeing propaganda come out about some of that stuff too. What was it? The fucking New York Times or something released that article that Hamas blew up this hospital, or the Israelis blew up this hospital, but that wasn't actually true. It was a rocket from Hamas, and it landed in a parking lot.
you know what? It that shit is so what our media has done is so dangerous because what they did was this story in particular, Gaza says, okay, the health minister of Gaza is a Hamas spokesperson who says Israel just wiped out 500 people in a hospital, and it's like they just every legitimate, although I don't believe they are anymore, paper in this country reported that not only was it fake, but it was actually a parking lot, and like 40 people died, and there were just I guess there was like a makeshift thing outside in the parking lot. But the missile, the not the rocket, not the missile. Big distinction.
Right.
Rocket comes
Which
from
again
Gaza,
comes
and
to
it
that like
fell on the
28% of
hospital
rockets
parking lot.
like
So it
fall
wasn't
right
even
inside
like
Gaza. So
28%. So what makes it so wicked is that the New York Times publishes this, and then are these witches in Congress like just reposted it like it was fact. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, AOC, Cory Bush,
Ayana.
Ollie Presley, Ayala Presley, they all reposted it as if it was fact, and then they never took it down. It spread like fire. Everybody believed it, and there were riots in other places around the world that night.
Right. So we again,
And
like, obviously
you
we're
can't
going to tie
undo
in
that.
what's happening there to kind of what's happening here now, and so this is like part of that. Uh,
Are you surprised
no, not at
at the
all.
college campuses being this way?
People are being indoctrinated into this like
I'm not
super
either.
liberal kind of like communism, and quite frankly, people aren't critical thinkers anymore, especially in the younger generations, and they're just seeing this, and I mean, they're chant.
I don't think
No,
they could
probably
find it on a
not.
map. I don't think they could find Israel on a map, but it doesn't matter because the consequences are still real. They're still threatening college students at like kosher, cafeterias, and it's I don't know, man. I was
Right.
like,
Well,
it's
like you
so
said, like the
vile. It
rise
actually
in
is incredibly vile and
anti-Semitism
gross.
is alarming. Like, we did this already, right? Like fucking World War II. Like, we did this already. I
Mm.
would actually be interested to kind of see what it looked like in the World War II era, like prior to the U.S. joining, like, because at that time, uh, right, for sure. And at
The
that
Nazis
time
had
as
supporters in
well,
America.
like the the death camps and stuff like that in Germany and France and stuff were mostly considered a myth. Like it's not like today. Remember, like you were getting your news probably a couple days or weeks after the fact, and nobody had really seen one of these death camps. So they were mostly just kind of, I think, kind of like a lore, like a tale. And then it wasn't really until the U.S. started going through Germany and stuff that they found these death camps, and people were like, oh shit, like this is real. Um, so I would wonder what anti-Semitism looked like prior to the U.S. joining World War II. Um, I would imagine that the levels are pretty high for anti-Semitism right now in the U.S., which is odd. Um, but is it like it's kind of weird because like think back to Charlottesville where they were down there with their tiki torches and people were saying like Jews will not replace us and all that stuff, but Republicans have relatively kind of been like, oh, let's hold off on this, Israel war thing, with the exception of some people like fucking Lindsey Graham saying that we have to go to war with Iran, even if they didn't do anything. Oh, for sure. And
Lindsey Graham gets wet when it comes
well,
to
you're
war.
seeing Unusual Whales
licking
put
his
shit out
chops
all
all
the
the
time.
time.
It's like, oh, this person traded these stocks like 2 days before Israel, like, and that invasion happened, and like they stand to make a ton of money, or oh, more funding for Ukraine, so these people sell these stocks and in order to make money, and it's just like disgusting how people profit off of war. Like that's not the way it's supposed to be, but it's what we have.
Well, I did want to mention that you brought up that people, how was it back in the 30s? Like what was that like? And I wanted to bring up that story of Walter Duranty, who was like in the Soviet Union, and he was sending back to the New York Times false information about what was happening in the Soviet Union. And there was a reporter named Gareth Jones who went there, and Westerners weren't allowed to go into Ukraine to see what was going on because there was a fucking famine happening and millions of people were dying. And Gareth Jones rather, Gareth Edwards is a director. Gareth Jones goes across into Ukraine. He gets in there, and he got to report back that there was like this massive famine happening, and that Walter Duranty was just sending propaganda back to the New York Times, and this was in like the 20s, or maybe it was the 30s, and so it just reminds me of like so little has changed in that way. Like the New York Times is still propagating false information from overseas by reporters that are, they have bad intentions, especially in Gaza. I mean, there are reporters on the ground in Gaza. Like the Associated Press was sharing office space with Hamas terrorists.
Oh, I'm
sure Hezbollah has got
there's
like
so much propaganda
shit going on there too.
Of Hamas. But
it works so well for them though. It's so easy. They just pull a child out of the rubble and they go, "Look what Israel did."
Yes, but
and then everybody
Israel
goes,
has
"God damn it,
also
Israel!"
lied about some of the things that have happened too. It's the same fucking thing with Ukraine. Like, I sent to you that the other day that basically, Ukraine is not really winning there. They're scared about aid. They're definitely
They're
losing
not
more than they're
losing
winning.
either.
Like, they have barely taken back control over anything that they've lost, and we've spent hundreds of billions of dollars there. And but they're saying that everything is going swimmingly, and Zelensky keeps firing people for being corrupt, but there's more and more corruption, and they basically admitted that the money that's going to Ukraine is getting corrupted out, and like not all of it's making it to where it's supposed to be going. They basically fucking admitted it, and we just know that happens like across the board, really. Like this isn't
that if you give
this isn't indicative just of
I'll
Ukraine.
grant you're
like,
right.
This happens kind of across the board. Well, that's why everybody keeps asking the U.S., not just Ukraine, not Israel, but just countries that aren't even at war, always ask for more and more funding and more and more funding. And I'm willing to bet that if any of that money was truly audited, you would find that it was going a lot towards corruption, even if it's 5%. That's too much. Like, so you can't keep funding this kind of shit, but it's indicative. It's the nature of governments to enrich themselves. Like, that's just kind of what they do. And you put people in power and they use that power to enrich themselves. Like, it's tales old as time.
Uh, yeah, I don't
I'm
think I'll
making
talk
I'm just
about
making
Ukraine today.
obviously the reference
Maybe another
to,
time.
because they're, especially again talking about what's
I
happening
think
here, they're trying to put forward funding bills, and they are tying Ukraine funding and Israel funding
sure.
together and making people vote on it.
Well, I agree with both of those fundings, and I don't believe you
No,
do.
it's a moot
so,
point.
We can have that
It's a moot
discussion,
point.
but I don't know if it
quite literally just
fruit it would
don't
bear.
believe in funding foreign countries at all. I don't believe in nation building. I'm sorry, you have to fucking defend yourself. Like, Israel's supposed to be the most secure country in the entire world. Okay, that's what they've always touted. They give up a lot of, like, what would be considered like our rights here in America that we have it via the Constitution and such. They give that up for a security state, which is what most people in America don't want, right? So they have kind of the opposite thing here. But Netanyahu has lost a lot of support just in general because, first of all,
Justifiably
they
so.
were told days in advance about this. That is not fake. That's fucking real. They knew days in advance about some impending attack, and they did nothing about it. Like, and because it was the most secure state in the world, people have been seen on video screaming at him, "This is your fault. You have not protected us. You can't protect us." And they want to oust him, but, like, clearly that's not going to happen. Like, they're going to suspend elections because they're at war, just like fucking Ukraine did. And so there won't be any elections against Netanyahu, just like there won't be against Zelensky. It's that, and that's corruption too.
I understand why you're comparing the two. I try not to, but I do want to say that the Israelis would agree with everything you're saying. The people there also realize that this was
100%.
a massive
And
intelligence
they do, 100%.
failure at every level. They know that. I mean, you see there are like a lot of stories coming out from Be'eri of the kibbutz, stories of like babies being burned alive in an oven and a whole family getting mutilated, like fingers cut off one
Sure,
kid,
but there's stories,
foot cut off of another kid.
yeah,
shit
but
like
there's
that.
stories in Gaza too where they have an entire like NICU basically of children who were pulled from the womb. They were unborn children pulled from the wombs of their mothers, and now they're surviving in like a makeshift NICU, and that's from an Israeli explosion. Like, it goes both ways, dude. Like, you can't just look at, well, Hamas did this. Like, dude, there are in fact fucking war crimes happening in Gaza. That is a fucking fact.
Israelis are not
collective punishment is exactly what's happening there, and that's considered a fucking war crime. And it's not the first time that Israel has done shit like that. Yes, they are. What the fuck are you talking about?
Civilians are not being targeted. Palestinians aren't being targeted. The Hamas is being targeted. Hamas is using human shields.
They're indiscriminately bombing buildings.
It's pretty simple. Under international...
No,
they're not indiscriminately bombing buildings. They know exactly what they're hitting.
They even fucking just apologized
yeah, they do.
because they leveled some fucking building and it collapsed like in on these like Hamas tunnels and killed a bunch of fucking civilians.
Yeah, whose fault is that?
It's
not Israel's fault that there's an ant nest underneath
terrorists
Gaza.
that Hamas built that under them when they have no place that they can go?
Okay, you can't. Okay, but you called it a war crime, and I'm telling you right now, under international law, it's not a war crime.
So the things that like AOC and them are saying, and Rashida Tlaib, which I do want to touch on real quick because they tried to censure her, and apparently that motion failed.
Okay.
To censure her.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, credit to Republicans.
Right.
They believe in free speech.
I agree
sure.
with that.
They voted against it because
But
they believe in free
not
speech.
the overwhelming support that it appears that the squad has is clearly wrong, right? But some of the things that they're saying aren't wrong.
I think it's totally wrong. Because you're gonna use
there's-
the word proportional.
It's like 15 9/11.
Are you not going to use that? I mean, that's what they're saying.
So we're just letting Israel 9/11
I mean-
fucking Gaza, aren't we? It's like, I don't know.
Why
I'm not
is
saying
Israel
that.
the only
That is not
country
what
that
I'm
is
saying.
not allowed
But
to defend
I
itself?
agree with you. It does.
I wonder. Okay,
Sure.
they're
And
the
it
only
very
country
much
that's
does
expected to show
appear that
restraint
way.
against the enemy.
And I disagree with that, because even Biden said it, and kind of everybody has said it. You have the right to defend your country. Full stop. Absolutely. I agree with that. Wholeheartedly.
Then I don't know. I don't know what else. It doesn't matter. Like, they have
you're
to
sitting here
eliminate
saying
Hamas.
that, like,
There's
they're
no other
not
option.
targeting
There's no other option.
children and stuff like that, right? But the American drone program, 95% of the
I'm
people
saying
that
it's
it
not-
killed were
it's
unintentional
unintentional.
targets. Just because they didn't target them, it's pretty fucking high. Dude.
95%. That's a pretty big number. I'll admit it's a thing. Yeah. No, there
Sure,
are going to
that's-
be
that's
innocent people that
part
get
of
killed
war,
now.
right? But the thing is that the U.S., when they were bombing
is.
people, were not always fucking at war with these countries. Like,
No. I mean, that's a
No,
real hard
you're-
thing to
you're
define,
right.
because we no longer declare war on people. Our Congress no longer gets the chance. The AUMF just. So yeah, we have. I mean, most people
we've
probably don't
had
even know we have
troops
troops in
for
Syria right
fucking-
now.
For
There's like
fucking
2,000
years,
troops in
dude.
Syria.
Like,
we're at war in Syria.
we've been over. Well, remember when
We're at war all over the world, man.
remember
Like,
when
we just
Trump
people don't
bombed,
know.
like, that fucking airfield in Syria, dude. I mean, this is before you
he
and I
killed,
had even met.
Soleimani in
I
Iraq.
was like, this motherfucker's going to start World War III. He's bombing Syria. We're going to see some big issues, and none of that materialized. But
Well, his goal was to eliminate ISIS, and he did.
now ISIS is still around.
I mean,
yeah, like ISIS,
I guess. At least
There
on
is,
paper,
and,
he did. I
you know,
guess there are people
we'll
from
see what
ISIS.
happens, man, because it is fucking terrifying that, like, you can very clearly see a divide between like the Axis and the Allies, basically, and like you're seeing Russia obviously like ramp up their rhetoric against Israel and basically in support of Hamas, and we're seeing North Korea send arms and shit to Russia and Ukraine, and all this kind of shit. So like, there's a very, very clear divide in the world, and that's a terrifying thing.
Well, so yeah, you were saying, like, yeah, you were saying, what was it like during World War II? And it was like a very slow thing that happens suddenly. It's like it built up, but the Nazis invaded Poland, and the Russians invaded Poland, and America stood by and did nothing, and Britain stood by and did nothing, and France stood by and did nothing, and then they became emboldened, and then they started doing other things. They started going after. They declared war on Britain. We still didn't support Britain when they would declare war on Britain. So then I'm calling this World War II.5 on our podcast, right? Because China is in a aggressive stance towards the Philippines. We have a treaty with the Philippines to defend them under any circumstance, right? That's a big deal. China is aggressive with India, and there have clashes on the border. And then you just mentioned Iran is supplying Russia with weapons, and then Iran is supplying all these other proxies with our allies, and it's slowly.
Now,
Hezbollah declares war tomorrow.
Did you mean to say that
man.
China?
That's why those
was
ships are
as
there.
aggressive
Yeah,
stance
go ahead.
towards Taiwan and not the Philippines, or if they're being aggressive towards the Philippines, that's news to me.
No,
So that's
it's
interesting.
Philippines. Yeah, it was news to me too because it didn't come up in the news at all. China has been putting their navy near the Philippines and doing crazy shit near the Philippines. In the South Pacific, they're buzzing planes. They buzz one of our planes 10 feet or whatever it was. If you want to, you could maybe filibuster for a minute. I'll
Yeah,
try to find
I think it's
information on
interesting
this
because
this
obviously
is
then
something that was
they're
like under
also taking an
discussed.
aggressive stance towards Taiwan. And, obviously we have agreed to basically fund
They
Taiwan as
are,
much as
yeah.
humanly possible. But I think the thing that's really important to understand here is that the more and more of these things that pop up, Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and the Taliban, whom, by the way, the U.S. is still giving hundreds of millions of dollars every month to, and they've actively declared basically war against Israel. So we're also funding a war against Israel, ironically enough. But the more and more this happens, the weaker and weaker the U.S. ultimately gets. Okay, like let's make no mistake about that. It's a lot of money. We already have an economy that's in a ton of fucking trouble. Um, I think this could be a death knell. Like it could. Again, Tim Kennedy was very, very much talking down about the fact that he feels like the U.S. is probably heading towards like a collapse, and he likened it to like Rome. Rome didn't collapse in a day. It was like very slow and drawn out. And I'd be interested to see more about like how that collapse actually came about, because I don't think he's right. I don't think he's necessarily wrong.
Decadence. I would think he's only right in the sense that empires fall. He's not maybe right about the like America is still a dynamic and
Right, but
interesting
the
place
more and more you
in the
see this
world.
kind of stuff, like, they say you
always will
can't
be.
really fight a war on two fronts. Well, you can't fund a war on six fronts, like the fucking way that the U.S. is basically attempting to do. Like, at some point, the taxpayers are not going to be happy about this at all. I would have to say, over the years of Biden's presidency, we've seen the erosion of like diplomacy throughout the world, for sure. And do I think that that's incumbent upon
Yep,
Joe Biden himself? No. I think that we've probably been
maybe
moving in this
not.
direction. Like the last World War was what, 70 some years ago. So probably do, I
75 years ago, I
guess,
think it
if you want to
ended.
put it that
76.
way. But the erosion of diplomacy in the world right now is a very scary thing, and it should be really for everybody. Right.
Yeah, because the bad people are the ones who take advantage of that weakness. Let me read you this. Actually, this is an article from today on the Navy Times. The aircraft carrier Ronald Reagan began a port call in Manila, Philippines on Saturday, a visit that comes amid tensions between China and U.S. ally over territorial claims in the South China Sea. And then I'm going to read from an AP article here, the aforementioned shitty AP. The Chinese PLA said the Philippine warship trespassed into what they said were Chinese waters around this shoal, was tracked, monitored, and restricted, and it was violating China's sovereignty and international law. So what they're doing now is China's following their Coast Guard or whatever is following Philippine ships, and so there's just this weird like Navy escalation happening down there. But I'm trying to find the reference to the treaty. Because we have to defend
So I feel
the
like China's
Philippines
like
if they are
feeling it out.
attacked.
Right?
Anyway,
Like we've kind of already said, with Taiwan, we are going to defend them.
oh yeah,
And sure as shit that China knows for a fact
I don't
that
know
we
that
will
to be
defend
true
the
now.
Philippines. So maybe they're kind of like fucking
I don't know
around with
now.
Taiwan. But if they
Oh, we
want
will
to,
defend the Philippines.
they're
Yeah.
probably just like testing the red lines for Joe Biden. And that's, yeah. It's interesting.
It's incredibly
because,
easy to do.
Janet
He's
Yellen
so
said,
weak.
and we can probably
So
move
I
on
do want
after
to.
this, but it's really funny. Okay, Janet Yellen said
No,
that
it's actually
the
going to lead into what I wanted to
uncoupling
mention,
of
but
the Chinese economy and the U.S. economy would be devastating to the U.S., which we've actually have talked a bit about this before, that China actually
well,
owns a large majority, or not, don't want to say a majority, but a large portion of the U.S. economy.
or
Same
debt,
thing.
I guess. But
In the
I
context of these days, it's exactly the
well,
fucking
so
same thing. It's not split hairs here.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm no
She's
defender of
god
hers.
awful.
I don't
How did she get her
I don't
job?
I don't trust anything she says.
She is
Yeah,
god awful.
I don't know. Yeah, she says a lot of bad things.
She
Like,
did.
oh,
Yeah.
we can afford two wars. I think she said that recently too. And it's like you should talk about war. Like you, Jen, you should never. It's not in your purview. But yeah, so like talking about the economy, the UAW strike just getting wrapped up here, and those all those people and all those places are gonna have to really start thinking about whether or not the strike was
That's
worth
true.
it because of the China
Let's
question.
let's make no bones about it. They got a good fucking deal. Okay, like the car companies
They sure
definitely
did.
bent over and took it in the fucking ass because the workers strike worked 100%, and they got a really good deal. I shared the details of one of the deals with you, and it was like 33% automatic like increases in salary. They increased what the top earner wage potential by like 40%. They got their 401k is now like a
All kinds of
10% company
concessions.
match. They had to, like, I think, reinstitute pensions and shit. Like, I mean, they got a fucking deal.
Question for you: do you think that this is the last time this ever happens? Do you think that we're not going to see another strike again because either the businesses are going to move, or the demand, or there's just not going to be any more stomach for the demands? Like, oh, you put auto glass
Yeah,
a
so
frame now, and you're making
I
like
think
more than
a
you and
big
I.
problem
Like,
that
what?
we're actually going to see is the electric vehicle market. A lot of these companies are funneling a ton of money into EVs, but some of these companies lose. Like, I've seen numbers where some of these companies, like Lucid or Rivian or whatever, lose like $100,000 for every car they sell. Like, how the fuck is that possible?
Yeah,
And no, this is
because you're
before
paying your
that, but
workers
like,
so much
I
money. I
think
mean, not that Tesla's a
a big
unionized
issue,
place.
there was just an article I think that came out about this, that basically was saying like EVs are in big trouble. They were supposed to be like the solution, but now they're a problem, and it's because they can't scale and improve the technology fast enough. And it's like really, really becoming a problem.
Well, what is the Elon Musk thing,
Yeah,
the phrase we were joking about? Like, manufacturing is hard. Is that what he always says? Yeah, manufacturing's hard. Like, he figured it out. He was able to scale
right.
it up, but
So one of the
Tesla
things
takes
that
the
Musk
losses
said
on
I
everything,
found
in order to get there.
really interesting is
But,
like he doesn't believe that like batteries or anything like that are a problem, because he was like, well, they're capable of 300 miles, and he's like, that's more than most people need. Fair, and they have been scaling back their prices to make their cars more affordable and stuff, which is good. Um,
I mean, if you've ever driven in one, they're shit boxes, so
I've
I believe that
been
they're
in
going
one, but
to
I've never
cost
driven
in
one.
places.
I would like to drive one, but
It's just all the, like you can wiggle the screen. There's little creases you could see, gaps in parts. But yeah, I get it. his is like the most optimistic framework for an electric car business because
Yeah.
Ford just
So he
canceled like
was,
$15 billion
but I think
in
it's
EV
smart
investment.
for Ford.
Like it's
So
not working for those
one of the things
companies.
that Elon Musk said on Rogan's podcast was there's only two car companies to have never declared bankruptcy, and I think one of them was Ford, and then it was Tesla, which is
And the
actually
other is
very
Tesla.
interesting
Yeah.
considering all of the car companies that are out there. But uh, on the EV front, they're fucking losing, dude. I mean, people. No, they don't. I
People
like
don't want them.
personally, I live like 300
I don't want
miles
one.
or so away from my family. I could not drive a Tesla, let alone afford one, um, because I don't want to have to take an extra half hour out of my time to charge my fucking car to make it.
So I know somebody recently who they were driving their Tesla in through my town. The battery died, and when the fucking battery dies, you can't tow those goddamn things because the wheels lock up. If you try to tow it with the front up, the wheels will burn up if you tow it too far, and the battery's dead, so you can't change it. You can't set the set. It's like a fucking shitbox, and then you got to take it to a charging station. Well, there's 14 different brands of charging stations now.
Right.
So which one do you go to? You have to
So
the adapter. You know, they're all
I
different. They all
saw
different adapters.
a
It's a
video of a
fucking
guy,
nightmare.
and the caption was like, "This guy has to make a killing," and he drove around like a Sprinter van that had like an electric charger in it or some kind of attachment to like a generator, a gas powered generator, and he would charge up people's cars if their battery died. He would basically be like AAA, but for just only electric cars and like charging their batteries and stuff.
Smart.
Like,
I mean, if
right.
you're in the
But
middle
see,
of nowhere and that
that goes
fucking
to
thing
show
dies, you are
people will
absolutely
innovate,
fucked.
right? So like you
And
can't
guys
tow
also
it.
won't tow
You
it.
can't change the battery. Like, what are you gonna do? Well, I'm gonna drive around a fucking Sprinter van, and somebody needs me, they'll call me, and I'll charge them probably fucking $3,000 to charge their car. Like, yeah, but
Yeah, it's
it goes to show that like
good for that guy.
there's
Yeah.
innovation with technology, right? Like this guy kind of is like a very niche thing, but he's created something that out of a need that has arisen from the technology we're seeing, but it just so happens to be that it's fucking gas powered.
I don't know that we talked about it in the group chat, but there was a big offshore wind thing that was supposed to go through, and the company just pulled out this week. Are you
Yeah,
familiar with the whales dying
a
because
little
of these
bit. Like I
things?
don't read
Like,
too much about it, but I heard about that actually because I think off of like Germany or something, a bunch of whales were dying and shit because of hmm these.
yeah, right whales. They
So
kill right
Elon
whales.
Musk says that you could power the
Um,
entire United States
I
on
was gonna
a
say
100 mile by 100 mile solar farm. One solar farm that's 100 miles by 100 miles, and you could power the entire United States.
I don't trust the things he says because he's got a stake in solar. Because if he was, if because he would, he's lying because you would say, oh, build nuclear power plants.
Yeah,
Then they
but
take way less space
I struggle
and
to
they're way more
not
efficient. But
believe and listen to what he says because look at what he's done. Like Starlink has been integral for wars like for the war
broke
in
even.
Ukraine. Like Starlink has been a huge part of that, right? He's talking about like fucking terraforming Mars and shit. And he basically does 90% probably of NASA's job, like firing fucking rockets and shit. Like they rely on him so much. Like he
It's not that I don't. I
everyone
know.
that
It's
hasn't
not that I
believed
don't
in him is
believe him.
proven wrong. So it's like, I mean,
Well, it's not that I ever doubt the guy, but like, I just when you say like 100 miles by 100 miles of solar, it's like Well, of course you'd say that because you're the guy who's making solar panels, so you would definitely be on the side of that. Not that I'm not convinced. I don't know. I don't know that. I just um I'm just sick of the EV discussion. I don't know why we're being forced
Oh,
down this
in the
path,
name of
but
climate change. Like, obviously, that's the big
anyway,
push for it. But, you know, people like to drive these EVs
it only
because it
goes so
helps the
far,
climate and
man.
they're
You can't make
ethical,
people
and they're
buy them.
fucking not. Like, the lithium and the cobalt and shit that they have to,
No, they have a
mine
bigger
is
carbon
mined by
footprint.
slave labor and shit like that. Like, I mean, that's a known fact. Same thing with your fucking iPhone. No, it's not. And
It's not a net
I
zero
personally don't
car.
think you would ever be able to get to a net zero car. You would have to come up with something that's not battery powered.
You'd have to charge them
Did
with something
didn't
that
Hitler
didn't generate
supposedly create like a
CO2,
water powered
which isn't
engine
going to
or something
happen.
like that? I thought I heard that.
I don't, I don't know.
Yeah, like
I mean,
BMWs.
The Nazis made crazy shit. I could try looking it up.
Something like that. I thought I heard
Nazi
that, like
water
water powered
powered
engine,
car
but
engine.
um I don't know. Like supposedly like you could power like cars with like hydrogen, and then when it mixes with oxygen it would end up just kind of like releasing a little bit of water out of like the tailpipe. Something like that. I've heard something about that as well.
So yeah, yeah. Yeah, those engines, or that's also like a more realistic option compared to an EV. It says Israel develops piston engine that runs on a water alcohol mixture, 70% water, 30%
Probably ethanol.
alcohol,
I
and that
see
was
that's
in
interesting.
2019.
I had heard that like Hitler or the Nazis at least like
Maybe,
developed a
yeah.
water powered engine.
I didn't know
But
that.
that's interesting because you can distill
Nothing would surprise me.
alcohol to run your car basically. So you would just be able to create your own fuel as long as you know the distillation process
Yeah.
and like how to make it. And then you just water it down and there you go.
That's how Mr. Fusion worked in Back to the Future. You just throw a banana peel in there and it's fuel. Um,
No, I've
watch
actually been
anything
watching
good
more
recently?
stuff.
No.
I just finished this movie called When Evil Lurks, and it was on Shudder, and it's all Spanish.
Okay.
So I watched it with subtitles because I don't know who knows this. I don't speak Spanish. No, not at all. We're not all from California.
You don't know Spanish?
I know you
What?
probably don't speak Spanish. Yeah, but you might. You know what? I can read subtitles.
I can read it.
So I watched the movie with subtitles, and it was
You got it.
surprisingly good. I mean, I can't really tell you if the actors were good, so I can't really understand what they're saying. But I think you would actually like this movie. I would go ahead and watch it. An article came out, it was like, "Oh, this is like the most disturbing movie of the year," and it was very interesting. So it basically like a demon or something like possesses people, and when they're possessed, sometimes they possess animals, sometimes they possess like other stuff. You're not supposed to kill it because then it releases the demon to possess like something else. So and then they set this probably like 30 minutes into the movie, they set this like setting of rules that you're supposed to follow when dealing with like these possessed people or possessed things, and it like goes on through this like whole town and runs rampant, and it gets like pretty wild. See some pretty cool shit. Like the I don't want to spoil it because I think you'll actually like this movie for a horror movie. So go ahead and watch When Evil Lurks.
Yeah, don't.
It was quite good, I thought, and I do think that you'll enjoy it.
Well, I got my letterboxed up. I'm tracking all the movies I'm watching now.
How was it?
Watched Mission Impossible: Dead
I
Reckoning
haven't
Part
watched it yet.
1. Thought that was a cool movie. It's cool. It's just cool. it's just I know you give me shit
Mm-hmm.
about like the technical stuff, but like the Dutch camera angle where it's kind of like tilted and it's tracking them. I love that camera angle so much, and there's just a lot of it. We both like Talk to Me. I'm sure we'll talk about that during our movie
I
episode at the
did.
end of the year.
It was okay.
I watched Five Nights at Freddy's. You did too. That was
Oh,
like
I've definitely seen
you said,
worse movies
I've seen
this
worse
year.
movies this year, and I was
I
like,
think
yeah,
I'm probably
I've seen worse movies this
close
year.
to the 100 movie mark for this year, for sure.
I
And that's just stuff from my
100
list. That doesn't
movies.
even include
I'm
like other
probably
shit that
close
I've
to,
watched. Like that's
but
just
we
from
also
my list.
yeah. So I watch a lot of like older stuff. So 'cause Criterion has older stuff. So I don't know if I would count those as new. Also, I watched Saw X, and
Yeah, you said you
if
didn't
you're
like
listening
it.
to my voice,
I
don't watch that
might.
movie.
I don't know.
You
I
should.
watched
You should.
Muzzle,
You might
which is
enjoy it.
with
Honestly,
Aaron Eckhart, and his like dog gets killed, and he's like a cop,
I like
and
him.
he gets another like violent dog, and he tries to like take down this drug
Really?
cartel. It was, yeah,
That's a
it
little
was
John
like his
Wicky.
version of it, I guess,
Little
but he was
John
a
Wicky.
cop, and it was not great. I mean, it was fine. I watched Slaughterhouse, which is on Hulu. Don't watch it.
I
It
don't.
was
You
pretty
don't,
awful.
don't tell me about it.
I watched
don't
The
have to.
Equalizer 3, which was it was okay. It was okay. See, I
didn't like
did.
the
I
first
liked
one,
the
so I
first
haven't
two,
gone
and
back
then the
to
third
them.
one, like Dakota Fanning is in it, and as we all know, Dakota Fanning was the little girl in Man on Fire, so she shows up in this, and the
Man on
tie-in
Fire.
with her is like interesting. You understand it for the story, but she ultimately is just like hanging out in the film and doesn't really like do anything. Yeah, well, I mean,
What if I told
that's
you that
fair.
Dakota Fanning hangs out in
I
every movie
watched
she's
The
in
Last
and doesn't
Voyage of
really do
Demeter.
anything?
Don't recommend. It's a heartbreaker for me as well.
Ah, this one's a
because it
heartbreaker
was
for me.
very good
Yeah.
premise, and like obviously we don't have to go through all of this, but like Meg 2, I watched Cobweb, which you and I both talked about. Uh,
I didn't like that movie until I thought
I
about
watched
it.
this movie
I
called
think I might
Dark
like a little more
Harvest
now.
that was interesting, but you kind of like figure out the fucking story before, like, I don't know, it's even 45 minutes in. Yeah, like I just watched
You
so
see it
much
coming.
shit, dude. Like I still have to go back and watch some of the stuff. So like I broke everything out by like month that it was supposed to come out on my phone. So that's how I kind of knew like when to start looking for it.
Oh, you know what?
Oh yeah, you did
I'm
mention
sorry to
that.
interrupt you. I watched Asteroid City. I like that one.
Nice. I was rating
I gave
mine
that
at
one
first,
5
but then I
stars
was
on my
like,
phone.
this is like I can't keep
oh,
doing
and
this. Like,
The problem is I want to go back and like I gave Saw X 2 stars. I'm like I should have given that one. I watched this movie called Lola that was like these two girls are getting signals from the future. It's during World War II, and they're getting stuff from the future, and they're passing the information about the bombings along to the London
interesting.
government, and then they're like evacuating the buildings the Nazis are going to bomb. And they kind of fuck with the timeline.
Craven the Hunter
not a
was
great
supposed
movie,
to
but the
come
premise
out
was
this
cool.
month or last month. Sorry, in October. Did they push that? They must have pushed that.
I could fact check that
When I was
live.
making this list, it just kind of like
I heard that movie got bad
I don't
reception.
know, it was like pretty preemptive. Like I've added so much stuff to this list. It's like insane. It's clearly not out.
unclear.
So it didn't
Unclear.
release in
It
October.
says, yeah, it says
I wonder if
maybe
the strike pushed it
August 30th of 2024. Yeah, everything got pushed back. Like I know the new not Game of Thrones. Help me out here. What's the other one?
Oh, House of Dragon.
The other Game of Thrones show. Fuck. House of Dragon. House of Dragon is coming out next summer. So that's like the
Right.
closest thing, but most stuff got pushed. Dune 2 got pushed, obviously, and all this comic book
Yeah, I don't
shit.
know. I think
Although the
there's.
Marvels is
I don't
coming
think it
out.
like. I don't think that strike hurt as bad. I mean, it hurt the workers obviously because they weren't getting paid, but I don't think it hurt like the industry as bad. Like it just kind of thinned out a little bit of what's going to come out, and so next summer we're probably going to have like a huge blockbuster summer. I can imagine that.
I mean, it's like kind of with the video games thing. Like they COVID shut down production on all these video games, and then all kicked back up. And then this year we got like
Yeah.
15 amazing giant games that came out, and they just keep coming out. Like it just doesn't stop. It's like Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Wonder and Alan
Yeah, I
Wake
mean,
2, and like on and
what
on
have
and
you
on. It
heard
just
about
doesn't
Killers of the
end.
Flower Moon so far? Because that's out.
Uh, well, it's I look. I think it's probably going to be a great movie. I'll probably like it. I've heard mixed things, but it's because people are injecting their stupid politics from 2023 into a movie that's like doesn't need that. Like part of the reason Scorsese and DiCaprio did it the way they did is because Scorsese. This is his words, not mine. I saw a video with him. He said that it's adapted from a book, and when they were writing the script, they didn't know what angle to take with the characters, and then they decided to take the angle that they're going to cover who DiCaprio plays in the movie, who was like kind of a minor, I think, character in the book maybe, but like they kind of built the movie around him instead. And so people are just like doing what they always do. They complain because it doesn't adhere to the politics of the moment or whatever. Or Scorsese's just an old guy directing and he doesn't get it or whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
the
just
people
shut
that
the
will
fuck
lecture
up.
Martin Scorsese on shit is hilarious. Like one of the
That's
greatest
what
directors
bothers
of
me,
all
like,
time, and you're telling him like
can't
you
just
don't
shut
know.
the fuck up and enjoy a movie anymore.
No, you cannot. You cannot. You have to have you have to hit every single bullet point. Like I just sent you that thing about Blade, about how
Yeah,
they're
and to
rewriting the
make
script for
him
Blade.
like a fucking
What
tertiary
the
character
fuck is that
too.
movie
Like
gonna end up being?
you can't call the fucking movie Blade then.
Yeah,
Like
it's everything now. It's injected into everything, and so I can't even get basically I
right.
can't even get a good review to you about Killers of the
That's what I
Flower
mean.
Moon
Like
because
you
they're
know,
all
you
like
and I talk
upset
about
about
this,
other
and
things.
we
Why
joke
is the movie
around
this
with
way?
each other about like how we perceive movies and shit like that. But like I know you know what you're talking about with movies, and I generally and genuinely trust your opinion when it comes to watching a movie. You again more into it from like filmmaking perspective and camera perspective, things like that. It's not like I don't like those things, but I need to watch something a bunch of times to really notice stuff. Um, but you can't just like fucking enjoy something anymore. Like you and I have discourse about movies all the time, but it's always in bad faith because we only talk to each other in bad faith. But we know, right? We know that we enjoy movies, and
We enjoy
I think
movies.
you also generally trust my opinion on a movie on whether or not I think it's good. But and there have been movies, right? And there
I
have been
do.
movies.
And also
Exactly,
I
like
know
you
there
said,
are
you're like,
movies
oh,
you
it was
like that I don't.
terrible, and I'm like, really? I thought it was like pretty good. But that's just a difference maybe of what you like and don't like in a movie. I mean, that it really all depends. Which I'm fucking
For all I
pissed
know, you
that
might not
it's
like
not out
Oppenheimer.
on
Like
Amazon yet. Because like
even
I've
though
been
it's like
waiting
my
to
movie of
rent
the
the
year.
fucking thing, and it just hasn't been out on Amazon yet. So I'm hoping soon.
Yeah,
I'm waiting for them to put
very
Blue
excited for
Beetle
that.
out on HBO.
I
I'm
don't
not
think there's
paying
anything.
to watch it.
I'm so excited for
Yeah,
Blue Beetle.
100%. Yeah, it's on
No,
my list.
honestly, are you seriously gonna watch it? Okay.
I have to. I have to
Maybe
see
I
the
will
shit
too.
show, dude.
I
Like
I heard
it's DC. I have to watch DC shit shows for some reason.
It-
Marvel,
I
could
bet
give
you it's
two
really
fucks
bad.
less. I cannot tell you the last time I purposely watched a Marvel movie.
Marvel movies are like they try to be
They're
good
just
and then they're
bad.
bad. The
But it's
DC
a
movies
fucking
are
train
just
wreck. Like
bad.
you have to watch it. Like I
They're
watched
just
Black
bad.
Adam, and it was just awful. It's just awful. And I'm hoping I'm hoping that just by
I-
transitioning over shit to James Gunn or whatever, because he did a hell of a job. Like, the best DC movie to have come out is the newest Suicide Squad movie that came out, I think, last year. And then obviously they did like the John Cena,
I agree with
the
you.
TV show was pretty good. So like I'm
It was
hoping
pretty good
that
too.
he kind of like revives DC as a whole and like makes it what it needs to be. Um, just stop with the fucking Justice League.
I wouldn't get your
like
hopes up.
stop. Aquaman is a dog shit character, and we all know that I hate fucking Jason Momoa. You hate Jason Momoa. He sucks. Like, just keep Aquaman
all
the
hate him.
fuck away.
He's awful.
And like, Cyborg looked so stupid in those movies, and then like the Flash was fucking terrible. Oh God. Yeah,
Actually,
like,
when we're talking about it out loud, this is all I hate
just
everything
suck.
about all
And
this.
I know Blue
This all
Beetle's gonna
sucks.
suck. But you know what? The problem is you'll say Blue Beetle sucks, and people
Oh,
will be like,
for
that's
sure.
because you don't like Indian
You know what, though?
people. No, it could just be a shitty fucking movie.
Oh, this one's
Oh, he's
the
Hispanic? I thought he was Indian.
this is the Hispanic one. Yeah, there's no, that one's the Marvel's character, Miss Marvel, I think, or something. No, I was gonna say the reason why they're gonna keep making Aquaman movies is because they make over $1 billion.
That's a shame.
$1 billion.
Well, it's like watching fucking
people
the
are-
Fast and
it's
Furious franchise.
pathetic.
Like, they're not good movies, but they make a fuckload of money.
No,
See,
half of them are
we
great
will
movies.
never agree on
That's
this.
where you're wrong. Half of them are great. I don't believe so. Okay. Well, we've been going for a little bit. I gotta bounce. You got any
No, buddy, it's good to be back.
closing thoughts for the listener at home?
Looking forward to doing this more often.
Yeah, me too. I'm happy.
Later, bud.
I'll talk to you later. All right. Go Panthers.